now live on Facebook. Good morning, Facebook. And all of
Yeah.
our Facebook listeners.
You bet.
Yeah.
Welcome aboard. We've got a really great program today. Carry the Load, probably one of the best veteran charities in the nation. So we're going to get started in about 10 seconds. Thank you. Share this and let's rip.
There we go.
Welcome to the Veterans Impact Show, where we continue the mission of highlighting veterans and service organizations who continue to serve our community and our nation. We're brought to you by Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Don't worry, retire happy. Welcome aboard. I got to tell you, this is a great day. Anytime I get to sit down with a couple of Marines, I'm in heaven. Even though I'm Navy, the Marines are the very best. You guys are so great. So everybody, this is Chuck Wright, U.S. Marine, helicopter pilot, SAR rescue pilot, and we've got a great guest who is a Marine. But let me cover a couple of things real quick. My wife, Diane, thank you for the social media. If you go to Facebook, you're going to be able to plug in with her and she can put your comments on. Thank you, DBTV and AUN Network out in Northern California. Follow us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube. This is a Veterans Impact Show, and we are sponsored by Fairway Independent Mortgage. My NMLS number is 311548, and our corporate is 2289. Now, we got all the legal stuff out of the way.
Got those lawyers off our back.
Absolutely, man. All right. I want you to introduce a great Marine.
So, welcoming to our show, and yes, we are continuing to broadcast virtually from the ready room of the USS Midway, but I am very pleased to welcome Todd Boeding to the show. Todd is one of the board members of Carry the Load, which is an incredible organization. We're going to get him to talk about it and talk about his involvement with it. 14-year Marine officer. So he and I have traveled a few of the same circles, one or two.
Yeah, and that you guys had a great time. But one of the things that I think is so great is the leadership that you guys bring from the Marine Corps into the civilian world. And one of the best things is carry the load.
Carry the load. Yeah. So Todd, tell us, how'd you get involved with Carry the Load? And then tell us about Carry the Load, what it is.
Yeah. One point of administrative order. I enlisted first. So I was enlisted from 89 through 95. And then in 95 went to OCS, where I got my commission and then ended up in the infantry through 2003. But the way I got into Carry the Load was really a matter of, I went to breakfast one day with a friend of mine. We got out about the same time. He was a former Navy SEAL, Clint Bruce, I believe you know very well.
Quite well.
And so Clint and I are having breakfast, and I look over and I see his shirt, and it says, Carry the Load. And I said, what's going on with that? Tell me about that. And he started telling me about it, and I said, well, you know what? I'm trying to do something very similar, and it sounds like you're further along than I am. So I threw mine out and put my wind behind his sails. And, I thought I'd throw that little reference in there for you, Jim, a little Navy reference.
Thank you.
But yeah, and it was the reason I was trying to start what I was trying to start had as much to do with serving others as it did with restoring purpose in my life. And, one of the things that I think many veterans can relate to is when we get out, we had a very clear sense of purpose when we were in. But when we get out, we lose that sense of purpose because the uniform reminds us every day when we put that on what we are there to do. And when you stop putting on that uniform, or you stop putting the gun on your hip and the badge on your chest, you lose that sense of purpose very quickly. So that's how I got involved in Carry the Load.
We got involved with Carry the Load when I met Chuck in 2015. We started this program, and I was telling you earlier this morning that we were at the 2015 March was the first time. I didn't know anything about it.
That was our first remote broadcast. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, especially in the rain.
Yeah. It was wet and it was muddy, and it did not dampen the spirits down there.
And Clint Bruce is an amazing human being as a Navy SEAL, but he brought so much leadership to this. But guys, tell us what his story was, because that's so important of how he got this going.
Yeah, it's really as simple as it was fueled by anger. He was at a backyard barbecue over Memorial Day and had lost a lot of friends. As a result, he was really missing those friends. And we talk about Carry the Load is really about healing, and he had not healed yet, having lost all of his friends. And he was looking around, and everybody is they're doing what a lot of people do on Memorial Day, and it's I hate to say it this way, but it's because they don't know any better. They don't understand the true meaning of Memorial Day. And so his wife came over to him and said, I think and for anyone who knows Clint, I mean, he looks like a big silverback gorilla. And he just had this
I prefer to say, yeah, grizzly bear.
He's big.
Yeah, well, I think silverback was his call sign, believe it or not. And so his wife saw how angry he was looking, and she said, I think you better get out of here before you hurt somebody, if not yourself. And I apologize if there are dogs barking in the background.
There are.
I apologize. Great. Okay, well,
are those devil dogs? I'm sorry.
Actually, yes, it is. I've got a German Shepherd, and she is just gearing up, ready to play with my wife right now. So, so anyway, I apologize, but he was very angry, and so he left. He went home, got a rucksack, put a pound for every friend he lost into that rucksack, and started marching around White Rock Lake here in Dallas. And as he's coming around the turn, he sees a gentleman who was World War II Korean veteran. And I think we all know that World War II and Korean veterans have a certain look about them. You can just kind of tell. And it's because, I mean, for crying out loud, they saved the world, so they should have that confident look. And so he's got these earphones in, and the guy says, it says something to him, and Clint takes out his earphone. He says, I'm sorry, sir. I didn't hear what you say. And he said, who are you carrying, son? And the guy could just tell that Clint was really hurting. And as a result, this Clint likes to say the tumblers kind of fell into place. And that is what he needed, in conjunction with his wife saying, I've never known you not to do anything about it. And so that story is really the birth of Carry the Load. And it was about, not everybody understands how to honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice. So let's do something about it, and let's teach them how to do it.
And it's absolutely, it's a great cause that I bought into very quickly. I met Clint, and he'd gotten some Marines to come down we were at Whole Foods Market on Preston Road. And at the time I knew nothing about Carry the Load, and he throws a t-shirt at me. It's the reason I know it was 2013. It was the 2013 t-shirt, and we were getting ready for 2014. So I got involved in 2014. And I am proudly wearing my 10-year anniversary Carry the Load shirt from last year. I've been part of it. I've been a load carrier every year, and we're going to have Todd talk a little bit more about what that means and how you can get involved. But yeah, we're down there bagging groceries, and I tell you, it's really funny. If you know anything about Dallas, and that part of Preston Road might be the most removed from our military. Despite the fact that DFW area has the largest concentration of veterans in Texas, and a lot of people don't realize that, you got a lot of people here who don't know the first thing about the military. And so, to your point, to that mission, go ahead, continue that.
Yeah, they don't understand it, but it really truly is the definition of ignorance. Not that someone doesn't want to know, or
right,
they don't care. It's just they don't know. And there is a certain reverence that society pays veterans.
Mhm.
But it's the humility with which we approach these things and the stories that are behind Carry the Load. That humility also does a disservice to us. And it's important that especially the younger generations understand that the freedoms we all hold dear were rented by the blood of those who made the ultimate sacrifice. And the other thing that we have a tendency to do, and I think this is actually coming out in the recruiting world right now, is we almost glorify what a lot of these people have done in such a way where parents are like, well, I don't want my kid to do that.
Right.
So it's a really delicate balance of paying reverence in such a way where you're not glorifying the sacrifice.
And we honor those that were lost by marching with a rucksack. Who do you carry? And we have all of these wonderful banners. And Chuck, you were going to show us posters, show us Willie Bear. And so it's a combination of things. But I'll never forget watching the people marching, the families marching in Rivershawn Park throughout uptown in Dallas. And they were having a chance to come together and talk and heal. It wasn't just about marching. It wasn't just about participating. It was all together. This was an event that impacted and affected everybody that was there. It was amazing.
And I got to say, Todd, I love the use of the word renting, because it very much is renting. It's not bought and paid for and then it's owned and we can forget about it. And this is, I think, at the core of what Clint was trying to do when he created this. And let's throw up the poster of Woolly Bear. And Todd, talk a little bit about the actual, and we'll expand this to the relays, but talk about the march itself. And as Jim was talking about, starting in Rivershawn Park and the significance of the posters and that part of the operation.
Absolutely. And, really, we call these storyboards, and I refer to them, I describe them as mobile headstones, because that's really what they are. We take them all over the country on the relay, which I'll go into a little more detail here in a second. But these serve as visual triggers, visual reminders, that allow us to really say to somebody, you need to say this person's name. We have to continue to remember them. The minute we stop, and I got this from a friend of mine, I know it's an old Jewish proverb, but he says, we all die two deaths. The first time when the last breath leaves our body, the second time when no one mentions our name anymore. And these people who have made the ultimate sacrifice, like Don Woollett, they deserve more than just that last breath and being forgotten. So what we do as an organization is we start in 5 different locations all over the United States in late April. So this is about to kick off. And think of it, we go through 48 continental United States, 48 continental United States, and then we've actually got rallies in Hawaii and Alaska. But think of these as like rivers and tributaries that flow throughout the country, and they end up in Dallas on Memorial Day weekend together. And the reason that we do this is we walk, kind of similar to the old, what do you call that? The Olympic torch, when you carry that, across the country. It's the same concept, except we carry the American flag and the Carry the Load flag. And it's to awaken people to what's going on. And when I say awaken people to what's going on, it's about awareness. And of course, you always find, some situation, where depending on the city, somebody thinks that we're protesting something, and it has nothing to do with that. Well, all we're trying to do is bring to people's awareness that there are those who have made that ultimate sacrifice on their behalf.
I'll tell you what, let's do. We're going to take a break to hear from our sponsors. When we come back, we're going to talk more about honoring those who did do the ultimate sacrifice, but also continuing the mission and continuing the education for future generations. It's about taking care of this nation and taking care of each other. And these were the people with the ultimate sacrifice. This is the Veterans Impact Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show, and thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation. We've got a great guest with Todd Boeding talking about Carry the Load, and I'm going to ask Nathaniel, would you put up the Carry the Load website so people can see? We want to talk also about being participants, either marching or contributing, because Carry the Load raises a tremendous amount of money, all of which goes to great VSOs that they vet. And people need to know more about Carry the Load. And we've got Todd Boeding here, who's on the board. So Todd, tell us, and where can we find that website, Carry the Load?
Carry the Load.
Yeah, it's at carrytheload.org. And one of the things that we are extremely proud of as it relates to our organization is that almost 94 cents of every dollar we raise goes to our programs. And that is a pretty unheard of number, to be honest with you. We run with a very skeletal operation from personnel standpoint, and they're amazing, the job that they do. But it really is, it comes down to, there's three different programs. There is the awareness program that we talked about before the break. There is the Carry the Flag, which is kind of our education arm. And that's about teaching the youth what it means to be a patriot. And then we have our the one that I think a lot of people are very familiar with, and that is our nonprofit partners, so our continuum of care. So these are organizations that do a tremendous amount of good work. They do a lot of the heavy lifting, and a lot of times they're taking care of those. Maybe they didn't make the ultimate sacrifice, but they certainly made a sacrifice of some kind. So those are our three programs, and that's where the money goes.
I think that's great, especially education of the youth. That is tremendous. Go look this up on the website, carrytheload.org.
And so one of the things that I was going to say is Todd, if you'll talk for a minute, this is a program that's open to anybody. And I was going to get you to talk a little bit about how somebody can get involved, even if it's as simple as coming down to River Shawn Park on the Sunday before Memorial Day and joining us for a walk, and talk a little bit about that walk process.
So I think it's best described in this way. And I've got a story about my own mother that actually plays into this. But, we want to be able to celebrate the lives of those who are no longer with us. But before you can celebrate, you have to be able to heal. And that goes back to what we were talking about with Clint. There were a lot of guys when this thing first started, a lot of people, a lot of families, there was such hurt and there was such anger that if you look at the event when it first started versus where it is now, a lot of those people have moved from the healing phase into the celebration phase. And again, I'm going to give you an example of my mother and how this happened. Her brother died in Vietnam. And so I made the decision one year to have a storyboard made of my uncle. And I said, Dad, I need your help. We're gonna surprise Mom. I had a storyboard made of Corky, and she loves going up on the trail and reading the storyboards and just learning about those who are no longer with us. And so she's going, through the process from left to right. First one, second one, third, she's reading them all. And then she gets to her brothers. And she lets out this huge gasp. And she just breaks down crying in a way that I had never seen before and I've never seen since. And the reason that it was so healing for her is that I realized, okay, he was killed in May of 68. I was born in April of 69. So she went from, oh my God, my brother's dead, to, oh my God, I have a child coming into this world and I don't know that I'm prepared for that. So she never really had time to heal.
Mhm.
And so when she had that moment, I realized just how powerful this very simple step of let's walk together, get alongside of those families who have made that ultimate sacrifice and show them that it matters to you and me. It's such a healing process and such a huge impact.
It really is. And one of the things that I am so amazed, there must have been 10,000 people
Yeah,
down
10,
there.
15,000 of my closest friends. Yeah, we get together and celebrate Willie Bear.
This is a great opportunity. So again, go to carrytheload.org. Join us at Rivershine Park, or if you're in other parts of the nation, go to carrytheload.org. Find out where your march is going to be in your part of the nation.
And come join us.
And come join us. There were 5 of them. This is important. This is Veterans Impact Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show. And thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation.
So we're welcome back to all of our listeners. We are talking with Todd Boeding from the board of directors, Carry the Load. God, I kind of lost track of it. And I have to say this, and I get emotional about it every year. This has meant so much to me because for 40 years, we lost Willie Bear 40 years ago. And it has allowed me an avenue to figure out what to do with those feelings. And there are a lot of feelings. And I think about it, and you'll appreciate this story, Todd. The last event at Carry the Load, or when friends and family take the storyboard and they walk it in, and I think about Terry Burgess. Sorry. Do this every year. I don't know why. You can't get over it. Fortunately, my macho credentials are intact, so I can do that. I can get in touch, as Tom Arnold said, with my feminine side.
Yeah, you were Marine Aviation.
So it wasn't quite as, I wasn't a knuckle dragging grunt.
Well,
Willie Bear was a knuckle dragging grunt.
But guys, this is so important. We remember, we honor those, but also the leadership that comes out of that and what we have done and what is being done today, because a lot of people don't realize how many wonderful things the military does in terms of training people and building people up. And one of the things that we also don't realize is the number of people that are lost is relatively small fraction compared to those who come back and make a huge impact on our nation. After World War II, that leadership group changed this nation. And Todd, one of the things that you're doing is continuing that mission, not only by being on the board of Carry the Load, but tell us a little bit about your deal, Tribe and Trust, in the leadership there, because I think that's important. And people need to know this is not just about honoring the dead. This is about celebrating the leadership lessons and moving forward to generate education for the next generations.
I appreciate you bringing that up, and I'm going to actually turn it back into something that Chuck was just talking about. Leadership is relational, and I think far too often it's seen as a transactional process. And Chuck was just wearing his emotions on his sleeve a minute ago. Well, that's we call that sharing your scars. We call that humility. And that's what leadership is all about. And within Carry the Load, we've created this space where people can come together and men can cry with one another, because again, these are real feelings. And if you suppress these feelings, you're doing nothing more than creating future problems. And so, the organization that I started, Tribe and Trust Leadership, it's a for-profit organization, and Chuck and I were able to go through some of the best leadership training the world has to offer. And it is very similar to Carry the Load in that if people are not shown how to care, then it's going to come across as though they don't care. Well, similarly, leadership is something that it's taught, it's learned, it's a skill set that has to constantly be honed. And so that's what this is really about, is saying, hey, especially with the next generation, they don't have a whole lot of good leadership from the standpoint of examples to follow, to be perfectly honest with you.
Oh, and I couldn't agree with you more there. We see we're down to less than 1% of America is putting on the uniform to serve. We see groups like Boy Scouts, where a lot of young men used to learn a lot about leadership. It is shrinking in size. We are losing all of these avenues that are teaching that would teach. And I think it's interesting. We've had quite a few guests on, like yourself, who focus, that is their career. But it's interesting because it's more than a career. It's their passion, is to share that leadership. And it is so valuable, be it to corporations or to organizations, to understand, because, and you said it in there, and I want to reinforce this point, leadership can be learned. And we all know, we can think of an example of what we call a natural leader. And I'd be willing to wager they go home at night when we don't see them and they're studying books on leadership.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And I think one of the things, we have so much technological advances, so many things going forward, but just because you've got the technology doesn't necessarily mean that you understand human behavior, that you understand interaction and motivation. And that's one of the things that I see in your website, Todd, is the science of human behavior.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that, how somebody can reach you, where you are targeting your teaching.
I am targeting my teaching actually based on a couple of different things. I mean, sure, I'm open to organizations from a consulting standpoint, but it's interesting. A lot of the leaders in place now don't feel like they need anything like that. So breaking through on that front is you got to find the right people. So one of the things that I try to do, and I really want to focus on the younger generation. There's not as much money in that, but there's way more of an impact. There's way more of an opportunity. But one of the things that I do that actually I think is very fun is around employee engagement. Organizations are always looking for opportunities to engage their employees right now. And employee engagement, believe it or not, studies show that only 20% of the United States workforce is considered fully engaged, meaning when they show up to work, you're going to pay them $1, you're going to get $1 worth of productivity out of them. Okay. Wow. So they're always looking for ways to get folks more engaged. And one of the things we do, as you're aware, I have a podcast for Carry the Load. And the podcast, what I do is I sit down and interview these individuals who have some incredible stories. Okay, now these are common people, but they have very uncommon stories. And what we do on the for-profit side is I take these conversations, have them in front of an organization, and then turn that into a workshop. So the conversation provides the content, the context for the content of the workshop. So, one of them that you might find to be interesting, Chuck, is around the message to Garcia. So the vast majority of us, from a training standpoint in the Marine Corps, learned something that we called message to Garcia, which meant you're not always going to have all the information, but you're given a mission and you got to go figure out how to get it done. And there's a process behind doing that. So again, we take these conversations, they're the context for the content of the workshop.
Oh, that's outstanding. And the interesting thing is, the first one listed is a friend and client of mine, which is Dan. who's another Naval Academy grad. So, and Wooly
Oh,
Bear,
Runzheimer, yeah.
yeah, Wooly Bear was a Naval Academy grad, and I wasn't. I went through the Platoon Leaders Course program, and I'll share this story real fast. Um, I don't know, we were 2 months into TBS, and I looked at back then we were actually physically getting checks. And I looked at it and I said, "Oh, damn, nice increase." And I had gone over 3 years of service because the PLC guys, it's called your pay entry base date. And everybody knows what that is. And the academy guys don't start the day they enter the academy. They start the day they actually swear into the service. And I started the day I signed up for PL. He was so pissed.
Interesting.
Now
I don't
they
think I
got,
knew that.
yeah. And now when they retire, they go from, if they retired at 20 years, they automatically go to 24. So they get theirs on the backside. So I wanted to, but Dan and I have talked about this. We have a great time visiting. His organization is another one of the nonprofit partners, and I'm not going to go into today because I actually work with one of the nonprofit partners, and I have, and I need to tell this story, and you'll hear me refer to her as Cousin Deb. Deb Wright is the executive director of Carry the Load. She is not actually my cousin, but I have declared that anybody with the last name of Wright is a cousin somewhere, somehow, some way. So tell her that Cousin Chuck said hi. She knows exactly who it is, and she'll laugh.
Oh, I'm sure I'll be talking to her today as we're at that point in the year. But
yeah, you guys are going crazy with it. And one thing I wanted to mention real quickly and talk about this a little bit. We've been focused on the military side of this, but this is a green side, red side, blue side.
Yes, yes, and I'm glad you brought that up because one of the things that we fail to realize is we're out here paying reverence to those who made the ultimate sacrifice, but guess what? They're dead. I hate to be so blunt and matter of fact about it. There's nothing we can do for them. They're not coming back. It's the families that it means so much to. It's the families who get the greatest benefit of it. And it's the people that didn't lose anyone who oftentimes are the biggest providers of the fuel that's necessary for this movement to continue, because they look at it and they understand, I have a privilege living in this country. Okay, forget the whole privilege that's associated with the color of a skin. Every one of us living in this country have a privilege that comes with more responsibility than anybody ever talks about. Okay, I'm as privileged a person as there is. You know what that means to me? That means I have more responsibility than someone who doesn't have this much privilege. And those people that you're referencing, Chuck, they're the ones that provide that fuel that is so important, because those of us who've worn the uniform, we did our part, and we know that. That doesn't mean we can't do more, and we try to do more. But it's those people who realize, wow, I really do have a privilege that I need to make sure I earn every single day.
And one of the things Carry the Load does, and I want to make sure that if you weren't in the military, when they ask the question, who are you carrying? If you don't have an answer, that's okay. Come out, read these stories, and the storyboards. I love that. Mobile headstones. You'll hear me use that again. They line Katy Trail.
And I think he didn't know a while ago. My wife.
So we're
was
close
just
to
asking,
500 mobile headstones, but they will line Katy Trail.
Oh yeah. Now, one of the things we're talking about leadership, and I got to tell you, what you guys do, just seeing this event, the amount of leadership and organization and structure that goes on, you've got to understand, where does all that come from? And it comes from, I think, military training. I think there's so much that for young men and women, going to boot camp is probably the best thing that ever happened to them. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I think we grow. So one of the things that I want to tell people is, hey, you get a chance to grow. You get a chance to go. And when you go to carry the load, you're going to get a chance to meet people like Clint Bruce, Todd Boeding, Chuck Wright, myself, many people who had great years, great experiences in the military.
As I said, it's 15,000 of my closest friends. And it's wonderful when the march starts. And I'll do this real quick. So I wanted to talk. Katy Trail is about 5 miles long, and there are mobile headstones all up and down it. You can spend an entire day and you won't read half of them, but they are some great stories, and read those stories. But come out and join us. If you're around the country, pull up the national relays and find one near you. I've gotten so many people involved with that, and it is such an incredible experience. It's something you'll want to repeat. It's something that makes you feel good about you.
And that's exactly it. It's an experience. And I've told people so many times, listen, I can describe it to you all day long, but you're not going to fully understand it and comprehend it and be able to process it until you go experience it. Until you hear somebody tell the story of someone who's on that mobile headstone. Until you get to that point, I mean, I being out on the relay, I've heard so many stories. I mean, found out, there was met a kid he never met his dad because his dad was killed in action 2 months before he was born. Okay, things like that leave an indelible print in your mind, and it's who we are as a culture. And that's the tribe. Jim, you're talking about, the leadership that comes out of, the military. That's because the military is a tribe. Okay. And tribes have a completely different feel than a team. And so, I want people to come out there. I want their kids to come out there and experience it.
There is a camaraderie that goes past anything you've ever known. It was the best experience I ever had in my life, and I highly recommend it. All right, we're going to take another break to hear from our partners. And when we come back, we want to finish this conversation and bring this program back into the dock with Todd Boeding. What a great, great American Marine. Thank you for being on board, and let's continue the conversation. Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show. And thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation.
Welcome back, and we appreciate everybody tuning in. It really is a terrific conversation this morning. Todd, I'm going to throw it over to you. As Jim said, we're about to bring this into the dock, so you've got the next 60, 120 seconds to share whatever final thoughts you have, and I promise this will not be the last time Carry the Load is on the show. Too much to cover.
Well, I think we talked very briefly earlier about the podcast Lessons from the Front. I encourage people to go listen to that, and this is not a shameless plug because I am the host of it, but it's because these are the stories that make us uniquely American. We talked about Dan Runzheimer a little bit ago. Well, his story, losing a Marine in combat and having to go visit with the families of the individual, that's just something that not everybody can understand. And so, the podcast is a good representation of the type of things that we talk about in Carry the Load and the type of patriotism that we're trying to inspire.
I think that's so important. Again, we want people to go to carrytheload.org. So if you're in Delaware, if you're in Virginia, you're in Montana, you're in Wyoming, you're in Hawaii and Alaska, well, they can't march very far, but they're going to have a lot of fun. Hey, go look at carrytheload.org. There's a local group that you can join and be a part of this. Also, think about where your dollar goes. 94% of it, according to Todd, goes to veteran service organizations that do a tremendous job in our communities, supporting veterans, and being there for people. It's important. So tune in, join in, and be a part of Carry the Load. Join us.
Terrific. Well, we want to welcome everybody, but we want to very much thank Todd Boeding for being here and talking about Carry the Load. We appreciate you being here. Next week, we continue our exciting guest. Who is our guest next week?
Benito.
Chief Petty Officer Benito, who's a Navy SEAL, who has created a dog training service, and we're going to learn a lot more about that. We can officially say next week the show will have gone to the dogs. Okay, that's a bad joke.
The devil dogs. Hey, I got to tell you, I love doing that. We've had people on before, and then my company, Fairway, has American Warrior Initiative, and we have given away over 300 service dogs to veterans. And I think it's important to know how our leaders are doing things. So that's why we want you to stay tuned, stay a part of the Veterans Impact Show, because we're here for you, not only as veterans, but as civilians, to learn more about our military. So I'd like to close with a prayer. Dearest Father, we thank you for all you do to protect our active duty military and our first responders around the world as they protect us. Thank you for those men and women who have raised their right hand and said, we will support the Constitution. Thank you, dear God, for the veterans who continue to support and continue to move forward in this nation and bring leadership like Todd Boeding and so many, and Chuck Wright, have done to help people. Thank you. It's not just about the military, it's about our nation as a whole. And dear God, help us to bring our nation back together. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, we set that very up. Well, we've almost got 2 minutes left.
Well, I wanted to get a chance to have you talk about, again, your friend Woolly Bear. You didn't really talk a whole lot about Woolly Bear.
We lost Woolly Bear at Beirut in the barracks bombing. It is the 40th anniversary this year, so we're going to make it's going to be an even bigger deal this year. Those who know me know that I have, and especially once I got introduced to Carry the Load, I had a great way to celebrate the life of a wonderful young man who was taken from us too soon. And he is just an example of literally hundreds of thousands of great young men who have made that ultimate sacrifice.
But Chuck, it's also about those young men and women who served and continue to serve and came home to be an integral part of our community, that built industries, that built companies, that built businesses.
Absolutely.
Todd Boeding built up great mortgage business before he changed to being the tribe and leadership. It's important that people know the stories of the people who are there for us. So we want to say thank you for being part of Veterans Impact Show. Please share us, join us, subscribe on YouTube, and enjoy DBTV. They're going to be carrying it twice a day or twice a week. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, we've got to figure out that whole scheduling.
Yeah, and AUN TV, thank you so much for all you do. Have a great, great day. This is Veterans Impact.
Shut